to another episode of Tiny Nest. I'm Kiva.
And I'm Jake. This series is following our tiny house project from the early stages through to completion and beyond.
In this episode, we go over roughing in our propane.
Alright, we're working on the propane system. There's only two appliances, the water heater and the furnace. And we're using this 3/8 copper tubing, it comes in a roll like that, for the whole system. And we've also got the sort of foam insulation that just sleeves over it that helps protect it and insulate it, obviously. I've already got a rough run from the utility box under the trailer all the way to the end here and mostly completed the work on the furnace connection. This is for the water heater and we're going to work on that now. All the fittings are flare fittings, so we've got a special tool that we bought to do that. I picked up a little pipe reamer that helps clean up a cut and helps make sure the flaring fittings are good. And I've also got a tiny little close quarters cutter here, which is perfectly good for the small stuff and the small amount that we're doing. I should mention that the flaring system is pretty simple how it works, but obviously having never done this before and the propane system being an important thing to do right, we're going to do the work ahead of time and then have a gas fitting guy come and check our work. Alright, so you can see that I've got a break in the pipe down here, and I'm going to put this T in it so that I can shoot off and connect to the water heater. So I'm just going to basically line up visually where I want this and then leave a little bit to work with, but I'm going to cut the pipe right about there. Okay, now I'm going to remount the burr that was left by the cutters. Obviously the cutter cuts deeper and deeper, and when it gets through there's some of the copper is actually poking inside. So I'm going to open that up. Okay, and now the most important step to do in the right order is I need to put this nut on first, because I'm going to actually deform the metal here, and you'll see, but this cannot go on after. So that goes on first, and this thing clamps around on the correct size, just right here, and you leave just the tiniest bit protruding past the tool. Up there. Clamp that on there, and then this slides over. The nut always gets in the way. There we go. And this tool says to advance the cone into the tube to make sure that you're lined up. And then once you're in there, tighten this down, make sure the jaws are fully clamped. And then just crank the little cone into the end. And I don't know if you can see from there, but each one of these little jaws has a tapered section, and so the cone basically seats in there, and then it'll basically bottom out. You'll feel it sort of wedge, and then that means that it's pushed the copper all the way up against that. And then you just undo everything. Slide that off. And maybe we'll get a picture of this. All right, and then just pull that off. And so you can see the sort of bell end there, and you can see that how this is going to work. Basically, the fitting has a tapered tip, and that's going to fit on there, and this is going to slide over and basically compress that against this when you tighten it down. And obviously the nut, the whole way that it works is such that the nut's throat here is what's going to compress it. So you couldn't possibly get this on after. If you'd forgotten, you'd either have to do it again, or if you were somehow able to access the other end, you could slide the nut on. But in this case, there's like 15 feet of pipe. You wouldn't want to do that. So this will end up going on like that. And then I'm just going to crank that down tight. All right, we're finally working inside the utility box. We've got a brand new 30-pound propane tank, just recently filled for the first time. And we need to connect that to the hard line that I've got run up to this point, and it's just the cut end right here I need to finish off. And I want to terminate that to this auto changeover regulator. So how this works is it'll accept 2 propane tanks and will draw off only one until that one runs dry, and then it'll automatically switch over and draw from the other one. And then you need to come out and check, and you'll see when that's happened, and then you switch over the valve at the top, and then you can disconnect the empty one and go fill it, and then bring it back, reconnect it, and then the process starts over. So in theory, as long as you don't let both of them run dry, you'll always have propane even when you need to do a fill. So I've got this adapter that's going to thread into the unit and then give me a 3/8 flare fitting on the other end that I can just connect directly to the hard line. So I'm going to mount this up on the piece of wood up here and get that connected, and that'll be the end of the hardline system. Now, one other thing about this is that this is the one non-flare connection in the gas system. It's just gonna thread in here. So I need to put on some of this yellow gas tape, same way I did with the white Teflon tape for some of the plumbing fittings. And the guy from the RV place, RV technician guy, suggested doing 2 wraps of this and keeping it tight. So I'm going to follow that advice and see if I can get a nice seal out of this. This stuff is much thicker than the white stuff for water, or plumbing, I mean. It's pretty tight. Yeah, I don't want to kill it. And obviously out here isn't as big of a concern for leakage, and I'm going to be checking every connection for leaks, so that feels pretty tight. So I'm going to go ahead with that and finish off this flare connection. Alright, now all that's left is to connect the hose between the regulator and the tank. There's a reverse flare fitting, so this is going to go straight in, no tape needed. It's a compression type seal. And on this side, it's a similar type of thing. It's made to be hand tightened on though. So that's going to go right on here. So I've made sure that obviously that the propane tank's valve is off, and we're going to leave that off until it's time to actually check the whole system. But I'm going to get this on here. I think I actually am going to use a real wrench because there's very little of the nut here to grab onto. I don't want to mess up this compression ring on it. I don't want to kill it because this little nub is pretty small. Don't want to bust anything. So that's nice and snug. And this guy's going on here. Kind of a weird sound there. I think the hose has kind of like a pin, the tip, that engages the valve to allow it to flow through. I don't really know, but anyway, the tank is off. So let's make sure here. There should be no flow, unwanted flow through there. But it's all ready to go now. And that's that. To give a little tour of the propane system, we'll start inside the utility box, which you just saw. The hard line connects to the bottom of the pressure regulator, runs straight down through a hole in the bottom of the utility box, and then 90s over to allow it to run along the bottom of the undercarriage of the trailer. We have it secured to little blocks of plywood, which are strapped to the cross members of the trailer, and this allowed us to avoid drilling straight into the cross members. We'll keep an eye on it, and if the wood doesn't hold up over time, we can always replace it with some other method of securing, but for now it's working just fine. When the pipe passed over the axles, we made sure to give it a kick to hug the undercarriage as tightly as possible to allow as much travel in the suspension without any interference. Where it tees off to feed the water heater, we used another 90 to have it shoot straight up through the flange into the framing to avoid having to deal with a curve. Once inside the framing, we have it strapped to one stud and then supported through a hole in another stud before it does an S-curve to meet up with the fitting on the water heater itself. The water heater's fitting faces straight backwards, so to avoid doing a massive U-turn in the pipe, we use the combination of a 90 and a coupling to give it a bit more of a low-profile connection. Back to where it tees off, the pipe carries on underneath towards the back of the house, where it 90s and shoots straight up through the floor near the furnace. Once inside, we have it strapped to the framing of the housing of the furnace, and then a gentle curve to meet up with the fitting on the furnace itself. We went ahead and tested the system by opening the propane valve and allowing the propane to flow through the hardline, and then spraying one at a time the fittings with soapy water and then watching for any bubbling, which would indicate the gas was escaping. We were actually lucky to find one very minor leak, which was a great frame of reference to know what to look for when checking the rest of the fittings. The leak that we found was actually on the furnace's fitting, which you're seeing here. The video is a bit odd because it's highly stabilized and zoomed in quite a bit, but you can see the bubbles forming very slowly through the soapy water. I had gone a bit easy on this one because I didn't want to damage the little 90 that's part of the furnace's fitting. So all I had to do to fix this was carefully give it an extra quarter to a half a turn, and then check it again with the soapy water as you're seeing here to make sure that there was no more bubbling. Having dealt with this one issue, and then confirming that there were no additional issues, we were very confident that the installation had been a success.
If you want to see some of our previous videos, click on the preview tiles, and subscribe if you want to follow our progress. You can also visit our website here.